Hello, and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast, episode number 22. I apologize for not putting one out in, I think, almost 2 weeks. There are some topics I did want to discuss, and a lot of them I didn't get to because of what's been going around in the world. And as you know, if you have been listening to them, there's a lot about mindset, goal setting, training the mind, more things like that to me are super important. You need to put your mind in the right place to have progress, and especially when there are obstacles or more challenges in life, we have to learn. You learn from them. We learn how to move on. So I'm going to get back to what I originally wanted to do is talk more about bodybuilding and everything. And something that's near and dear to my heart is simply are writing up weight training workouts. Now, a lot of this is anecdotal. If you know me, I've been involved for a long time when it comes to weight training. So I've used myself as a test dummy, and I've used a lot of my actual write-ups of programs for weight training for my clients, and I get feedback and I manipulate them. But I probably have hundreds of different types of weight training routines. I've been involved again. I started weight training as a teenager, and if you want to age me, that was in the 1980s. I competed a lot in the 90s as my beginning, started personal training at that time. So I would try different workouts on myself and combinations of exercises and everything. And you did get a piece of that, a few weeks back about my 3-day split that I put out there on my podcast when it comes to, basic weight training for those, who didn't have all the equipment at home. So you sort of got a sense of, my theories and philosophies. So a lot of it is just what I think is beneficial with the combinations of angles and everything. But today I'm going to talk about actual splits. Like when you hear the term 3-day split, 5-day split, 4 days, whatever the case may be, I'm going to talk about splits and how they apply to those who are just starting out, what I think is most optimal for the individual, and what I think will give you the most progress. But backing up a couple more steps, and I even tell this to my clients, obviously I think my workouts are the best. Not going to lie. I think they are. I have to hold my ground on that. But every once in a while, a client will say, well, Joe, can I try this split? And I'll be like, yeah, go for it. If you want to mix it up, you want to try something different, go ahead. But I remind them that no matter what split, what workout you do, it's all about trying to get stronger. It's all about volume. Now, people hear volume and they think, well, I got to do tons and tons and tons of sets. No, that's not true. Volume is a simple mathematical equation when you take the weight that you are using, multiplied by the sets, multiplied by the reps, and you get a volume for that particular exercise. So if you're squatting with your working sets, not counting warm-ups, working, the prescribed sets, 3 sets of 10 for 100 pounds, multiply it out, you get the number. You get your large number. So the next time you attempt it, you would do 3 sets of 105 pounds for 10 reps. So that number is larger. You did more volume. So that's what volume comes into play. And that's what is the most important thing, at least in my opinion, when it comes to trying to get stronger. You get stronger, you build more muscle. You build more muscle, you increase your metabolism. And you see all the beautiful things that happen. So to me, volume is really important. There are multiple approaches to volume, meaning that, for beginners, and I say a beginner, with a less than 5 years under their belt of weight training, you can take a linear approach, and simply meaning linear, just adding weight a little bit each time. Yeah, you're going to stall, but then maybe that's the time when you want to switch up your exercise. So if you've been doing, back squat and you started off at 100 pounds and you faded out and you're up to 200 pounds. That's possible. Just humor me. And then you're stuck. Well, if you're still kind of new and you want to try different exercise, try front squat and then build that up. After, I would say, 3 to 5 years, then you can start playing around with periodization, daily undulating periodization type programs where they work sub-max levels and everything. And I could do another whole podcast on that. So basically, my first initial point is whatever you're doing, it's about volume, trying to get stronger. Now, how do we optimize that? Okay. How do we know how often we should train per week? And it really depends on your fitness level. So I'm going to start with the beginning and just use real life examples that I have. So if I get someone who's never really touched a weight or has fiddled around off and on, never really consistent, I may have them do a full body workout because this way they get more repetition in. And a full body workout, you may train every other day or 3 times a week. So you're hitting your body, say 3 times a week, each muscle group 3 times a week, but you're not overdoing it with number of exercises. The goal is to really a lot of repetition and training so you get better and you learn how to do those exercises properly, and your strength is going to skyrocket over the first couple of months. And depending on their progress depends on taking them to the next level as far as workout splits. Now, if someone has been athletic throughout their life but weight trains once in a while, I may have them go right into a 2-day split. And a 2-day split, there's a myriad of variations. You can do upper body, lower body. You can do a push, pull. And typically for a 2-day split, if you fall in that category, I would suggest to weight train 4 times a week. So you would hit each muscle group 2 times a week. You can do like a Monday, Tuesday, rest, Thursday, Friday, and just repeat. So you hit upper body, lower body, rest, upper body, lower body, rest over the weekend. So therefore, your frequency is still kind of high, and you're still not doing a ton of exercises, but you're doing a little bit more volume per muscle group because I think therefore your body can handle the variety. So it's a step-by-step process. Conversely, I would not take a beginner and overwhelm them with a 4-day split where you train it takes 4 full workouts to train the full body, or even work out each muscle group, 1 time per week. So you just repeat. You're not giving yourself that training opportunity to get better. You're having so much lag time where you're not that strong, where you need that kind of recovery. Because again, if you're doing a full body split or a 2-day split, you're going to recover quicker because you're not lifting as much weight because you're new to the game, and it's just basically a relative thing to your level of fitness. Now, we get on to those who've been weight training 3 to 5 years, who have some good experience. They may want to pay attention to each muscle group a little bit more, and this is where you fall into the category of doing a 3-day split, which I discussed a few weeks ago, and a 4-day split. And truth of the matter, a 4-day split is my favorite. I just find that with, at least 3 to 5 years of weight training in, or the ability to train more frequently per week, a 4-day split, you're going to get a lot out of it. Now, again, that also goes to, when you enter the 3 and 4-day split category, can you weight train, 5-6 times a week? That also is a determination of those. I may get someone who is pretty experienced, but they can legitimately, because of their work schedule, their family schedule, can only train 3 or 4 days in a week itself. So I'm not going to spread it out and have them do a 4-day split where they can only train each muscle group once, because I do favor some frequency. So therefore, they would do a 2-day, so they're hitting each muscle body group twice, or a 3-day where they're hitting each muscle group 1.3 times per week if you do the math. So that has something to do with it. The availability of you getting to the gym also determines how what kind of split you want to do. So you take that more advanced person, and hopefully they can weight train 5 to 6 times a week, and we enter the 3-day split. And an example of a 3-day split is the first day you're doing your whole entire lower body. Then you do a push day, so you're training your chest, shoulders, and triceps. And then your pull day, where you're training your back and your biceps, you rest and you repeat. So therefore, to get the good amount of frequency in, you want to train 5 times in a week, so you're hitting everything almost twice. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced and you've done the 3-day split and you want to move to a 4-day, then I think that is again, like I said a couple seconds ago, that to me is one of the most ideal splits you can do, because you're doing enough volume while you're getting some frequency in. And for example, if you do a 4-day split, you could do 4 workouts in a row, rest and repeat. So in a 7-day period, you're hitting all but 2 workouts twice. So I think it's like a happy medium. So you just repeat. You're not going to train chest every Monday, legs every Tuesday. You would just stick with it and just let it roll. Now, the nice thing with a 4-day split is there's a ton of variety of versions that you can do about mixing it up as far as weak points, priority training. I mean, I have probably about 20 different 4-day splits written up, geared towards, different types of physique competitors, because they may want to favor a muscle group because it's lagging. I have more powerlifting based 4-day type splits, focusing on the big exercises and not as many of the accessory type stuff. And again, if someone's lagging in shoulders, we may hit the shoulders twice in a 4-day period. So you have a lot more flexibility. And I still think you have enough time to recover to really focus on those strength gains in a linear approach. Now, typically when I write up a 4-day split or any type of workout, I will give 3 versions of it. And the reason why I do that is because I think even after a month to a month and a half, you may get stale, more so mentally. So therefore, it's a good time to change the exercises. But not to change the exercises every couple weeks, because you're not giving yourself that opportunity to get stronger on that particular movement. And I think I touched upon this before one of my first podcasts, is that people jump ship. They'll change their workouts every couple weeks, and it drives me crazy. They get bored quickly. I get it, but slow down a little bit and realize that by doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get better. It's just like riding a bike, playing a sport, playing a musical instrument. The more frequently you do it, the better you're going to get. So therefore, the better that you get, the stronger you're going to be. The stronger you're going to be, the more muscle you're going to have, so on and so forth. So when I give a workout, I'll tell someone, stick with it for 4 or 5 rotations or a month or to a month and a half before you move on to the next column, a variety of exercises. I think that's the sweet spot. Again, that's anecdotal. That's something that I've learned over the years as far as a sweet spot. 4-day split, you can run forever, and what's the nice part about that is that most likely you started off doing a 2-day or a 3-day, now you're on to a 4-day, and you have that flexibility, meaning that if you see yourself over the next month, maybe going on vacation or you're working more, you can drop down to a 3-day split so you keep that frequency up. If you know that you can only hit the gym 4 times in a week in a 7-day period, go back to a 3-day so you're hitting everything 1.3 times. So every third workout, you're hitting it twice in a 7-day period. Hopefully you're following me. So you have that flexibility of bouncing back and forth. And I'll do that myself. If I know there's a busy time, typically, I would be promoting a show at around this time of the month. I'm just busier with show preparations, driving around, picking up stuff, blah, 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 blah. And my workouts aren't as focused. I'm guilty of that, usually for a few weeks before going into a show that I promote. So I will go back to a 3-day split. instead of doing a 4-day, just because I know I have less days to train or more of that mental fortitude to push through. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of that, let me cut it back. And it's fine, gives the mind and the body a break in a certain way. So you have that flexibility of bouncing back and forth. Now, some of you have seen professional bodybuilders spread things out, like literally, like do everything, just do one muscle group per week. So over a 7-day period, they train the whole body. Like they'll have, a quad day, a hamstring day, which is not a bad idea. Okay, I'm going to get into that. But then just have an arm day, a shoulder day, and they'll take 5 to 6 workouts to hit the whole body. I don't think it's a terrible idea if you want to try it out once in a while, but the downside of that, the first one, is what if you miss a day or two, meaning that something does come up in your life? Well, then you're not hitting that muscle group in a 7-day period, What if you have a minor injury? You're going to take more time to recover, more time to hit that muscle group again. So, and do you really need to be training arms by themselves? Do you really need to have 4 exercises for your biceps? I would say no, because it's a small muscle group and the biceps are being worked when you do your deadlifts, when you do your back. So really, do you need to do 4 main exercises for your biceps? And my other argument is that if you need 4 or 5 exercises, and let me back up again, I'm rambling. People, when they do these bro splits, these workouts that are stretched out, they will do a ton of exercises. They'll do like 4 or 5, maybe 6 exercises for one muscle group. Well, I'm a little old school, meaning that if you didn't fatigue that muscle group within 3 exercises, what the hell have you been doing? You're not working hard enough that if you need a 5th exercise, that 5th curling bicep movement to fatigue it, well, what'd you do with the first 3? To me, that's just waste of time and energy, where you can be training the body more frequently. So that's another downside. Maybe you think it's better, or you're just reading too much bullshit on the internet saying, I need to be doing this because Joe Blow did it and he's an IFBB pro. Well, that IFBB pro, most likely he's using a lot of steroids, so their bodies are made up a little bit differently, and they can get away with the less frequency per week because of the stimulus of the drugs. So going back, if you want to try it out once in a while and you know that you have no interruptions and really spread it out thin and put more work into it, so be it. But don't think, again, just because you see other people doing it, it's going to work for you, because it goes back to my first point. What's most important is what you do with it, the volume, getting stronger. Just seeing some dude that's super huge that's doing, these splits with all these exercises, well, obviously they may be using drugs, or they just have fantastic, genetics, and whatever they do, they're going to grow. So you got to keep that in mind, So it is a step-by-step process when it comes to these splits and when I prescribe them to actual clients. And it is finding that happy, sweet, medium spot, for yourself, as long as you're getting some frequency in per week and you still are getting stronger. There's nothing written in stone when it comes to this stuff. Variety has its play, but also equally important is getting stronger upon each exercise. Again, my favorite is a 4-day. That hits the sweet spot for me, because after I train 4 days in a row, I'm ready to take that day off. I'm like, all right, I need a break. And sometimes I will continue straight through and work out 8 days in a row, but then I'll definitely take that, day off on the 9th day because my body just needs it. So you're probably now wondering, what are my favorite 4-day splits? Like I said before, I have a ton of them dealing with working with, to build up certain muscle groups, to prioritize things. But the one that I'm favoring right now, and I have 2 different versions, would be day 1, would be lower body. Day 2 would be your chest and your triceps. Day 3 would be your back, and I may throw in some calf exercises. By the time if I were to get the calves on the lower body, I'm pretty much spent. Day 4 would be shoulders and triceps. So typically, as far as exercises and the number of exercises, the lower body would be a combination of 5 different movements for the lower body. Definitely one that prioritizes on squats or leg presses, the heavy basic stuff, a stiff leg, maybe some single type movements like extension leg curls, lunges. Again, I'm not going to get into full detail because there's a ton of different ones that I favor. Same thing for the chest. I would do three exercises for the chest, 2 for the tris. Back, I will favor and do 4 exercises, throw some calves. And for the 4th day, again, shoulders and triceps, 3 for the shoulders, 2 for the triceps. Another version that I will do if sometimes I'll split up and want to do deadlifts later in the week is that I'll do the deadlifts with the back day. And if I feel like I'm not recovering enough, I will have a rest day in between, So I'll do the lower body day. I'll do the chest and tris. And before I hit the back with the deadlifts, I will take a day off. And then back on to shoulders and triceps. Now, if you want to mix it up, you can take the triceps and biceps and swap them. You can do your biceps with your chest. You can do your triceps with your shoulders. If you want to do if you want to split it up even more with the hamstrings, on that back day, you can prioritize your hamstrings. So, for example, and this is a third version, the first day that you work weight train for a 4-day split would be quad dominant day. So you could do your squats, your lunges, your leg extension, goblet squats, leg presses, what have you. Then you can focus on your chest and tris, rest day, and then you can focus on back and deadlifts and actually your hamstrings. So what I would do is something like a deadlift, a leg curl of some sort, and then maybe 2 or 3 back exercises because the deadlifts are working the back. And then, the 4th day of training would be your shoulders and your triceps again. Those are just some examples. Again, if you're really interested in learning more about my workout splits, you can email me. And of course, any questions about this whole podcast, email me at fitfranco@verizon.net. If you have any questions or concerns, interest in coaching, teamfrancobodybuilding.com. Hopefully this has been helpful and give you some insight and clear up some things, because it all still comes down to focusing on getting stronger. The workout does play a role, and my biggest advice besides getting stronger is having that repetition and focusing on getting strength gains. Hopefully this has been helpful, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.